Hello and welcome to the latest Dealroom briefing, this one on longevity and healthy aging. My name is Orla Browne.
I'm Eglantine Dupuy.
And yeah, we're going to get straight into it. We're going to unpack some data on the state of longevity tech and healthy aging, a bit of silver economy. And Eglantine's been doing lots of work on this, so she's the best person to start. But maybe we can start with what we actually mean by longevity and healthy aging, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. So longevity, for us, that's technologies that are looking to extend lifespan, but also enhance quality of life. It's often biotech innovation, so cell rejuvenation, targeted therapies and drugs, but also some management of age-related diseases. In the report, we also look at silver health, which is more focused on the health needs of older adults, often more on the digital health side, so more care management platforms or mental health help and so on. And as a whole, we think healthy aging combines both of these somewhat and helps to promote basically physical, cognitive health, and just overall have a holistic approach to aging and well-being, essentially.
Cool, and can be quite a broad area, because I think we dive into as well everything from supplements to specific kind of gene therapies and behavioral apps and things like that. So we'll kind of try to unpack a little bit where all of those fit within it all as well.
Yeah, definitely interesting, intersection between biotech, digital health, medtech, and all of those.
Nice.
So starting with longevity. So if we're going to talk a bit about extending lifespan, we want to talk first about where life expectancy is at and how it's evolved over time. So if we look back to a few centuries ago in the 1870s, people were living about 30 years of age, and now that's over 70 years. So that's more than doubled in in a few centuries. And a lot of that is, of course, due to a lot of technological and medical advances that have influenced our quality of life and our health. So, for example, having better access to drinking water, better hygiene, sewage systems, and so on. A lot of vaccination that even managed to eradicate diseases like polio or smallpox, that really improved child mortality as well. I think over 150 million lives of infants was saved throughout that. We also have antibiotics that reduce a lot of the infections we used to have. And lastly, nutrition and food security. So with a lot of the automation in agriculture and also fertilizers, means that we have a much more abundant food system, and a lot less malnutrition and famine globally.
So does that mean if we've doubled lifespans in 150 years, are we going to do it again in the next 150?
I really don't think so. Also because if we look at a much shorter time frame, actually, if we look at the past 20 years, that's completely flattened. So we don't, of course, have such a big jump. It's really slowing down, which is quite normal, I think. But yeah, now it's kind of people are thinking, what can we do to add a few extra years, but more importantly, add extra healthy years of living, to our lifespan.
Right. So we've extended lives, but not necessarily quality of life, and there also could be, some people argue there could be another kind of step change breakthroughs in some of these areas that could mean that those numbers actually go up as well. But I guess these are also important things for societies, on individual level, but also things like working populations. If we have a workforce that's healthy for longer than some of the demographic challenges that some countries are facing, this can help solve some of those problems as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in the report, we look at the proportion of years spent in good health, and over time, that doesn't actually improve so much. It's just more years, but not so much more healthy living. And yeah, there's of course a lot of socioeconomic impacts that come with living longer, or and so on. So yeah, that's also what we're gonna unpack today. But if we look a bit at longevity, when we talk about reversing aging, slowing down aging, that seems a bit abstract, and we kind of think okay, what are the actual technologies that are actually being developed. So yeah, in the report, we basically mapped out over 200 companies in Europe, and we spread them across these categories. And this is kind of the combined funding that each received.
And this is specifically looking at kind of startup segments rather than big pharma, but where some of the novel areas are coming from at the moment. Should we dive into some of these? So Vadiva Bio, I think, was the biggest Series A in Europe this year.
Yeah.
And obviously metabolism and dietary has been massive topic since Novo Nordisk and Ozempic and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of one thing that we see as longevity, but kind of longevity adjacent, because it's to help your lifestyle and your overall health. Yeah, but Vadiva Bio, they raised a massive oversubscribed round of about 400 million. And what they do is GLP-1 drugs, but that you intake orally. Unlike the Wegovy and Ozempic that are injections. And so what they're looking to do is that improves like for patients, like intaking orally, of course, is much better, much preferred to injections. And I think they're also looking to do it like once a week. Which is more manageable and also could be like much cheaper. As we know now, I think it's like $15,000 in the US, so really expensive those injections. But yeah, I think they're already like preclinically tested, already in phase 1, so that's really promising. And they had like some really important investors on board, and yeah,
super cool. And an area where Europe has really been leading. And the oral dosage is really important because actually the efficacy of lots of drugs often comes down to whether people are consistent in taking them, right? So if you make it a lot easier to take the medicine, then you're also going to get much better outcomes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And also because we now find that like as soon as people stop injections, they're like reverting basically back to where they were, or somewhat where they were. So
which of the other categories are you kind of most excited about at the moment?
That's a good question. Yeah, there's like definitely the biggest one is cell repair and regeneration. So they're looking to restore damaged cells.
So this is
and
de-aging.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's interesting that it's where they directly try to do it, whereas like cellular cleanup, they improve the body's ability to do it, which like, of course, I don't know the specific science behind it, but like seems like a better idea for me to allow the body to do it naturally, maybe then directly intervening. And yeah.
And there's a lot of funding going there at the moment. Is there kind of proven efficacy as well, or is that still kind of hypothetical?
Yeah, it really depends on the targeted area. So if we look at Centenary Labs, they have many different applications. So they have one for like vision loss, like for your brain, for like muscle loss, which really happens a lot when you age, but also like fibrosis. And so they have some at clinical stage, and then they have some that are a lot more like preclinical, some at discovery. So yeah, I think it really depends to the target areas. But yeah, we that's really one thing where you think it's a bit sci-fi-esque to think about these solutions, like how concrete is it actually? But yeah, it really depends. Some are in advanced clinical trials, some are really experimental, like the cellular cleanup that I was mentioning, and some like are available and widely used, like for example the nutrition, which are more parallel, and metabolism. But yeah, the fact is that really aging is really complex, and it's not due to one factor. So kind of assessing the efficacy of it, I think, is really complicated, and that's what like regulators have to face now and see with the regulation how they do it. But yeah, like one important milestone to cover is the FDA recognized like the potential of longevity medicine, and how that happened is it's kind of interesting. There was this company called Loyal in the US, and they wanted to develop some longevity medicine, but they thought, okay, we'll start with going through the veterinary track. So they started like developing medicine for large dogs to extend their lifespan. Actually, interesting. Like people were quite willing to put their dogs in like these clinical trials.
It's a big market as well. People love their pets.
Yeah, they love it, especially the large dogs. I think, I think they have shorter lifespan, but you get very attached to them. So, it seems people were into the idea. But also, if the FDA recognized it, it meant that they, like, once they did, it meant that they recognized the potential of longevity medicine as a whole, and also like they treated age as a disease that can be solved. So it basically was kind of a milestone for the rest of the longevity medicine, even though it stemmed from like pet use.
Super cool. Doing the God's work.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think a lot of people will know about longevity, or will have heard about longevity from people like Brian Johnson and some of these like billionaires who are getting stressed about their own mortality and trying to solve it before it's too late. What can we say about the landscape of these kind of big billionaires investing in the startup space and longevity?
Yeah, I think that's something that comes up like quite often. Like I just remember like seeing quite a few articles like here and there, this billionaire invested in this billionaire invested in that. So I thought it was more of a trend to kind of like look to uncover. So I started this mapping, kind of pinpointing exactly the relationships between each. So yeah, we see a lot of things. Like of course, most of them are in the US, but there's still like Juvenescence. And Centenara that we mentioned earlier. And yeah, for example, like Jeff Bezos invested in Altos, which is like the most funded longevity company. I think they got like a 3 billion round a few years ago. Of course, he was not the sole investor, but yeah, it does show that this like really large interest in that. And yeah, also like Sam Altman invested in Retro, and they have a quite like special relationship.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit about Retro?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because Sam and personally invested in 2022 about 180 million. But now at the start of this year, it was announced that OpenAI was developing their first biological model in partnership with this company. And what they do essentially is they try to design proteins that could transform human skin cells into youthful stem cells. And so stem cells are kind of they're human cells that can then develop into many different types of cells, so like brain cells, muscle cells, and they kind of tend to fix tissues. So this model like was looking to kind of predict how the proteins like work together, which is a bit different to like one other very known biological model, like from Google,
DeepMind.
DeepMind, AlphaFold, which they look more about like predicting protein structures instead of like their relationship to one another. But yeah, in general, like I think the results were like pretty good from OpenAI, like 50 times more efficient than humans. And yeah, it's really interesting. I think the cell rejuvenation is it's like a really interesting sector, but I think they have like quite some limits on efficacy. I think only like 1% like go to throughout the whole like rejuvenation process, and it also takes a lot of weeks. So like having this very specialized model can help with these like scientific breakthroughs as well.
So currently very expensive and a long way away from being in our hospitals and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. But it's still like very promising, and yeah, it's very notable that like OpenAI's first biological model was on longevity, and that like Sam personally invested. That shows definitely like trust in it and real like interest and confidence and the potential of it.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so maybe we can show a little bit of what's going on in the funding landscape right now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned this standout round in 2022 of Altos that really like pushed the US like to stratospheric level. But now, if we look more recently, European startups have really ramped up to US counterparts. Just this year, they're already at 770 million, surpassing the US for the second time only. Of course, a large part is due to this massive 400 million round that we talked about, but it's still like very notable.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to compare to overall VC, basically Europe would be much further behind the US. So the fact that they are looking like on par in most of those years is pretty significant in itself.
Yeah, definitely. That's not what we see in every segment for sure. But yeah, so I mentioned we looked at over 200 longevity companies in Europe only. We also have like 500 worldwide, and yeah, we try to map it across these segments that I mentioned. So if you want to learn more about it or explore them, yeah, you can. Through the link.
And so if we've got all of these amazing companies that are working on making our lives longer and better, do you think that there's an upper limit on what we can expect to be our lifespan, maybe within our lifetime, or within 100 years? What are we looking at? Are we going to be living forever? Is it going to be we're going to be 200? What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's definitely a complicated one. I think like there's a lot of talk about like the person that's gonna live forever is already born. That yeah, we're basically gonna be immortal eventually. Uh, but I don't know if I really see it that way. I think it seems to be like a bit, well, firstly, like hard to estimate. And like, I don't think that will like completely defy mortality. Of course, we can add those extra years, add healthy years of living, like rejuvenate whichever like issues we have and tissues we have in our body. But if we look like very specifically at the technology, for example, I think we have like a lot more of the technologies today to like beat climate change than we have the technologies today to like make someone immortal. Like if we compare the two, where
They're
things
kind of
are.
related, right?
Yeah, of course, of course. So yeah, the question is more about like where is funding going to be directed, where is the interest at, the research is at, and which choices we make. But also a lot to do with like grants and funding. So yeah.
I'm curious as well about some of the more lo-fi, let's say, solutions that are around, because cell regeneration is super cool, but there's also some pretty simple things like lifestyle choices or products that are able to help sort of behavioral nudges in the right direction, but also things like supplements. Like there's a lot of kind of hype around certain supplements, and we get kind of fed ads for them on every podcast. Are these things that have real proven efficacy, or is there kind of some hype in there as well?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. Like there are some real concrete things, and then there's some like very marketing, like celebrity endorsed influencer things. Like I think if they don't really know, like if they don't really tell you what's in it, then you can kind of see that it's probably not super great. Like I think the very concrete things for me is like creatine. I think it's talked about a lot recently. At first, it seemed to be kind of a like gym bro thing, just to get more muscles and so on. But actually, it's proven to boost a lot your energy, your strength on top of muscle, which is things that decline with age. But more than that, your cognitive function, your memory, even with depression and so on. So that's like really added benefits, and I think little to no side effects. Like maybe I think only stomach discomfort or things like that, but not crazy like negative side effects. And then yeah, there's a wide range of things like probiotics, like improving your gut microbiome. I think that's also a really good one. Then there's like cold exposure and so on. But then yeah, you have a lot of like weird supplements that you don't really know, like, or even collagen, things like that. I think are maybe like a bit less concrete, or a lot of the biohacking, like saunas, infrared. Yeah, these I would be a bit more wary of, I would say.
But there's a lot of investment and growth that's been going into this area in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we compare kind of the sectors we've talked about, drug discovery is of course most funded, and that's of course because biotech in general tends to be more funded. It's more capitally intensive. But if we look at growth in the past few years, in the past 5 years, nutrition, yeah, we see it soars 800%. It's also just because there was not much interest beforehand, or people were taking supplements, but there was not like dedicated startups to supplements, or yeah, or some like a lot of like even platforms so that you can order it and so on. So that's just more of a more new trend. Yeah.
And would some of the kind of microdosing, Elon's medicine cabinet stuff, would that fall into the nutrition and supplement section here as well?
I think that's like it can have maybe some overlaps, but I still see it as kind of tangent, like yeah, a bit of a tangent. It's more like related to like psychedelics and like I think it does have a lot of benefits for like addictions and depression, things like that. But I wouldn't say necessarily and cognitive. But I'm not sure if it's really focused on the longevity of it all. Yeah, but there are definitely a ton of startups in that, and we do track those too.
Cool. And maybe we can touch a little bit on preventative health as well, because yeah, that's an area where it's kind of been growing a lot in the last few years.
Yeah, totally. So one super important company to look at is NACO Health. They actually, so they raised 260 million rounds this year, which is the largest round of the year, and the only late stage round this year. But they're really interesting. They do health scans. They have like clinics in Stockholm and two in London. And
Founded by the Spotify founder.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yes. So they're quite famous. They got well, now they reached a unicorn status, and they have a lot of like major investors like Lightspeed and like Star and so on. But yeah, what they claim to do is, or what they do is, these health scans can basically collect millions of data points in just a few minutes. They say like in 1 hour you can get a complete like health report. And what's crazy is they do it on many different things. So like your immune system, your blood, your cholesterol, your skin, even your arteries. So they get all these data points, and then you have a consultation with a doctor that kind of goes through the report with you. And one thing that they mentioned on their website, which I thought was notable, is they do this analogy with cars, saying that like if you have a car, every few years you're gonna have a check. Like it's mandatory that you have a check, and you don't wait for it to break down. And that should be the same thing with your body. And I think that really like speaks to a lot of people. Like people now. Really are looking more to prevention and well-being more than treatment and care. In the report, we mentioned this figure saying that in 2019, 17% of the spending, the healthcare spending, was going to this prevention, and the rest to treatment and care. And that's going to move to 61% by 2040. At least it's projected that way. So we see this consumer shift. People are taking a lot more care in their well-being, doing fitness, nutrition, but also in their healthcare, not just relying on their doctors or waiting until something is wrong, but being very proactive about it. And looking for health scans, blood analysis, even gene testing, early disease detection, and all of that.
And on a societal level, again, that the earlier you catch something, that it's a lot cheaper to treat. So if you invest in that preventative side, then you get the savings on the treatment side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for now, I think this preventive care, like not everything, but for example, this Nico Health, it's like 250 euros. It might seem high, but if you actually look at how many, for all of these data points, how many like doctor appointments you would have to take, and how much time you would put into it, actually it kind of evens out, I would say, or less. But this is out of pocket spending, whereas a lot of the treatment will be like covered by insurance. But I think it's really necessary that now insurance providers, governments look to prevention, because that's going to mitigate a lot of like the healthcare costs. A lot of spending that's happening in healthcare, and then, yeah, also of course improve our quality of lives like very easily by just preventing diseases early on.
Nice. Well, I'm on the wait list for Nico, so I'll let you know how it goes if I get through.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this is set to hit an all-time high in 2025 is the projection so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, pushed by this very large round. If we look at the past few years, there's been less late-stage activity. Last year, it was just pushed by Orla's 125 million round. So a bit less late stage, but still some very notable companies that are coming out of it.
And Orla is the smart ring that kind of tracks your sleep and other health markers to, again, nudge people into better behavior and sleep patterns and exercise. And things like that.
That's one where I think it might be like quite overpriced, because it's like 300 euros something. And if you compare it to like that body scan. Depends what you're looking for, but yeah, it seems like quite high.
Yeah, or at least there's a barrier to access for some of these things for some people because of the initial upfront cost.
Absolutely. And yeah, as a segment, it's definitely like growing really fast. If we just look at the past 5 years, it's grown 35%. If we compare it to the broader European VC industry, that's only 19%, and at the health industry, 16%. So it's more than outpacing by twofold the broader health industry. So,
albeit from a low base so far, but yeah, relatively nascent but growing fast.
Exactly.
And yeah, maybe if we can have a look at where this stuff is happening across different geographies as well.
We see that UK startups have raised a lot more, 1.3 billion across the past 5 years. That's not necessarily so crazy. Of course, the UK is like often ahead in VC funding. But if we look at the next couple ones, so Switzerland, pretty notable, more than France, Ireland, Germany combined. And that's because they do have a lot of notable companies like MindMaze. It's like newer rehab digital solutions, Centenara that we mentioned a few times, Timeline, which is like the most famous supplements company. And also it is quite a biotech hub in general, Switzerland, but I think they do also put quite a focus on longevity, health centers, things like that. So yeah, and Finland, Ura, that we also mentioned.
Yeah, so again, if we were to compare this to a chart of just general European VC, we would have UK at the top, but then it would be France and Germany and Sweden next. So interesting to see what some of those differences are.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe we can talk a bit about like broader socioeconomic impact, because it's great to say, okay, we're gonna live a lot more years. Maybe there'll be more healthy years, but overall, like, what's the impact of living longer? What we know already now is that we have a generally longer lifespan, lower birth rates, so really like aging population, and that's gonna have a lot of impact. So we know that by 2050. Almost half of the population would be 55 or older, which is like, really aging, and is going to mean a lot of changes for services like caregiving and management of these age-related diseases that we mentioned. But also, of course, like a strain on pension funds, a strain on social security funding. So that's why the prevention that we talked about is one way to remedy that. Because of this out-of-pocket spending that's still quite high, even in public health systems like Germany and France. And overall productivity is set to decrease, of course. If you have a more aging workforce, then it's going to be less productive. And also living more years means working more years, means more impact on your body. And so just a general need also for better healthcare.
So there's some real urgency around this area, or there should be anyway.
Totally. And that's, I think, what startups are recognizing, like all these underlying trends and like what services they can provide to help out with that. And so overall, we've mapped almost 400 companies across some of the segments we talked about. So you can explore that. And we looked also at silver economy startups, so more on the elder focus.
Yeah, can you maybe say what do we mean by silver economy there then?
So silver economy is maybe like it's focused on the health of seniors, but we can see a bit broader than that. So helping also with like end of life planning, and loneliness management, things like that. So just any solution that's basically like aimed at elders and like making their end of life more comfortable, let's say.
Yeah. Okay, so some crossover, but we kind of distinguish between these areas as well.
Yeah. Just in general, some other segments we look at are femtech. We even have a deep dive on it, and also metabolic health, which we also touched upon a bit, which is definitely a big sector globally.
Yeah, and all of these slides will be making available. You can also explore all of the landscapes that Eglantine and the rest of the team have worked on. And if anyone would like to have a specific chat with Eglantine about some of these areas and your research needs or company discovery, then you can also get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to jump on a call. So then maybe one last question for Eglantine before we finish. So we're talking about, how we increase lifespans and how high they might go and whether we can even reverse aging. Maybe a more philosophical question, but if we could reverse aging, should we?
Yeah, that's definitely a complex one, like definitely one for philosophers and so on. But I don't believe that we'll like fully defy mortality. Like I really doubt that we'll get to that stage. I also really think like something we didn't talk about also is like the disparity that it impacts of. So we talked about like these billionaires kind of like looking to these solutions to reverse and slow down aging, but if we're looking at more on a level of everyday people, which access are they going to have to that? Well, like some people say that by 2050 will be a lot for like rich and famous people, but by 10 years later, that would be also to middle class, and there will be a better access. And there's a famous futurologist that thinks that people that are under 40 will have access to immortality. Of course, that's to take with a grain of salt. Like it's predictions that we don't really know when it's based on, but yeah, I think like longevity is super interesting because it's at the intersection of like aesthetics. So a lot of like about your skin. And just in general, like your aesthetics. But there are actual like benefits to it. Like we saw a lot of like for Alzheimer's, for cancer. So I think it will be like spread beyond just the longevity aspect of it. So it's an interesting balance of the two, and of course what we mentioned like things to consider with retirements. And the productivity for society. But yeah, so it's all things to consider. If we're adding healthy years, then definitely. If we're adding just years to add years,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think a nice point that we should be focusing on, improving things for lots of people, not just making one person live forever.
Absolutely.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for joining us. As I said, all the resources will be made available, so you can look at the slides, look at the landscapes, and have a chat with us if you want to find out more. And let us know if you disagree as well. Should we be turning back time and making ourselves live forever?